at West Virginia University? Oh,
Sorry, I'm recording because
got it.
between
Okay.
onboarding sessions, new people have the option of seeing the onboarding recording. Because it can be
Great.
on.
So I just retired from the Division of Forestry and Natural Resources. I've been the program coordinator for the Recreation Parks and Tourism program there. Work closely with Francisco Valenzuela and Trace. Trace Gale was one of my PhD students back a few years ago, and just got off this nice PUP sponsored study tour that John facilitated a couple weeks ago. So finished that. I managed to spread COVID around to everybody. You can just call me Typhoid Mary here, but I guess somebody's got to do it. So
I'm hoping you gave me BA5 and that now I'm immune to the most
I know, that's what I'm
infectious
hoping to.
disease that humanity's
at
ever
least for a
known.
couple months, maybe. Yeah.
I'm at 99% better, so we're good.
All right.
Jean, who are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Jean Kinneck. I worked with John in a previous lifetime, and
Right.
so he reached out at the right time. So I'm on the board. I run a national organization. Our goal is to promote distance running in the United States. So we are a pretty large, about 2,500 organizational members strong. So I guess I bring a body of knowledge of organizational development and management that John and I have talked about a lot in the recent months.
And a couple decades ago as well.
Yeah. And it's funny because I said to my family, oh, it looks like I dodged a bullet by not going to Costa Rica and getting COVID with everybody, only for about the same time to have it run through our household too. So
there's no dodging at this point.
There isn't. There's an article on the Post this week that it's like, if you haven't had it, don't worry, you'll get it, and I'm like, yeah, everybody's going to get it.
Not only did I spread it to the PUP inner circle, but I also gave it to my son and grandson the day after I got home. So
well, you know what? That's as long as it keeps kind of waning in strength, like now's the time. Everybody needs to get it. Let's build that immunity.
Steve, I don't blame you anyway. Trace said half of the conference participants ended up getting it. So
is that right? I didn't know.
I don't know if she was exaggerating, but she didn't sound like she was exaggerating.
No, I'm sure it started at that opening night social. They had a reception, very, very social, Yeah.
Andres, now we are two outside the United Statesers. Where are you at?
Hi guys, I'm Andres. I'm from Punta Arenas, Chile, the Magellan Strait. I'm new here in PUP.
Everybody is Andres.
Okay. I'm just new. I have a degree in natural interpretation in Barcelona. I have been working in a natural lodge in Tierra del Fuego. I'm the manager there, so I'm really into heritage. Like, I want to know a new experience. I want to meet new people. So I found in PUP a really good hub to improve heritage around the world. No?
Just for people who might not know where Punta Arenas is, he lives very close to the most southern tip of Patagonia, right? Fairly close to Antarctica.
Oh, very cool.
Cool.
Just 1,000 kilometers away from Antarctica Peninsula.
Wow.
You've got a lot of snow on the ground right now, huh?
A little bit. It's not like past winters, not like when I was a child, but still we have frozen lagoons and a little bit of snow.
And Cecilia, who also comes from a place where there's occasionally snow, but in a different hemisphere.
Yes, hi. Greetings, everyone. I'm Cecilia, based in Oslo, Norway. I am an expert advisor to the UNESCO World Heritage Sustainable Tourism Program and founder of World Heritage Catalysis, which is an emerging commons-oriented community of practice where we apply new tools and innovative technologies for the protection of heritage and community resilience. And the two specific tools is the Visitor Management Assessment and Strategy tool developed for UNESCO, and the VETS, the World Heritage Exchange Trading System, which is looking to economic innovation and specifically mutual credit to some economic infrastructure that can be built into communities for more economic resilience. So yeah, that's me.
So this is probably the most diverse onboarding. We have a director, a new advisor, a new officer, and 2 TSMs. So this is great. Well, anyway, the purpose of this is to get you all a little more familiar with PUP. It's originally and still kind of predominantly designed for new directors because it's most important to get them upgoing, but most of the information is useful for any new PUP member. And I'm going to try to shoot for an hour and a half. And as you know, this is being recorded. And I'm going to go through a series of video share or different, not videos, but shares with you to get to know PUP a little bit better. And I encourage questions the whole way. So to begin, I'm going to share our opening video, which is extremely outdated and sometimes embarrasses me to share, but people seem to like it. So here we go. Oh, yeah, let me make sure that I'm sharing sound. I'm not sure if I'm sharing sound before I do that. Nope, glad I didn't. Now I'm sharing the wrong screen. Here we go.
Everywhere in the world, many protected area plans pile up unimplemented, yet planners continue to churn out the same kind of plan again and again. It's not a technical or a resource problem. There are many good technical people and resources for planning. It's an idea problem. But changing ideas is very difficult because many people dedicate their reputations, their careers, and their lives to the old idea. Physicist Max Planck suggested that we simply wait for the old idea people to die, but we don't have that time. We need to protect our heritage now, which is why the PUP Consortium does a four-pronged approach. We have a big new idea to make the old idea obsolete. The old idea is basically to treat plans as if they were scientific studies, where the scientists have all the power to change and exclude almost everybody else. The new idea, what we call holistic planning, is to bring all these stakeholders together so they feel ownership for the plan, so they plan continuously, so the plan never goes out of date. But the new idea people are always in the minority, so we need to embrace those people in a democratic grassroots approach. And to convince the old idea people about the new ideas, we're going to have set up model sites where holistic planning is done successfully, do quality research and publishing, and train the new people with the new idea so they don't build their lives on an old idea, and disseminate the new idea through training centers on almost every continent and a global lessons learned center, so that we can have eventually a tipping point, much like a stuck door that suddenly opens. Much like when a government declares that its protected areas will be managed through holistic planning. Much like when the big guys in the field finally open their door to the new idea. In this wild world where we live, the old idea just doesn't work, which is why we invite you to join the PUP Global Heritage Consortium.
Well, I share this because technically it is our official intro video, but it's interesting. We're having this onboarding meeting at a very interesting time, which makes it a little more challenging for the onboarding because PUP is going through a pretty big transition. I think a lot of things will be changing with PUP in the very near future. Anyone who was familiar with some of our strategic meetings we had in June will understand, and I'll make allusions to that as we go, but it's not my objective in this onboarding session to share with you all the new ideas until they become more concrete and official. But at the same time, the ideas in this video are a little bit dated. As a matter of fact, the whole video is dated. And I suspect we'll create a new, more professional one when we do reach the next level of stability in what will become of PUP. So I'd like to give you a little bit of history of PUP now. It's a history that hasn't changed, I guess only the current part. And we can visualize PUP in 3 stages. The first one, and this is the story that I usually tell about PUP's founding. Jean might be familiar with some of these references. And this was back in 1998 when I was in Honduras, the country manager of the Nature Guide training program. And one day, the president of Pico Bonito National Park, which is very close to where I was living, and he's the guy who's in the front row here with the beard here in the front row. And he said, John, you know, we just got $5,000 from the Angelica Foundation to make a public use plan, but I don't know how to do that. Do you have any recommendations? I was working for an organization called Rare Center for Tropical Conservation, as was Jean. And do you have any recommendations for a methodology or for a consultant to help us come up with that? And I said, well, I don't, but you know, at the very least, we can go out and see what's out there since we've been partners with Pico Bonito for a couple of years now. So we went out and we started to look through the documents that we had in our office, and we talked with a few experts in the field. You know, a couple of those people maybe Steve has heard of. I don't know if you know Jim Barbarak, Steve. And we checked the internet, but this is 1998. So anyone as young as Zach and probably Andres have no idea that there really was nothing on the internet in 1998. A few of us might otherwise be aware. So I came back, but the thing that we did find, what we found by looking over the landscape of Latin America was plans of all kinds, management plans, conservation plans, security plans, financial plans related to protected areas that were dead and dying on this landscape, partially and completely unimplemented in great numbers. So he came back to Fito Steiner, the president of Pico Bonito, the foundation that ran it, and said, Fito, there's nothing out there that we can recommend. But perhaps because our organization is a grassroots development and we work in ecotourism development, even with a small amount of money, maybe we could come up with something at least as good as that which is out there and help you out. So he said, okay. And so I broached that to my boss at the time, Brett Jenks, who's now the CEO. And he said, fine, but I don't want to see any more plans on shelves. So I came back to Fito and said, okay, we'll do this on 2 conditions. The first condition is you guys have to write your own plan. Now, even back then in 1998, we had some inkling that the way consultants were used somehow contributed to this non-implementation of plans. And I said, the other condition is rare, we will actually research why plans don't get implemented. Because we had, again, another inkling, another idea that it was not simply just a lack of resources like everyone blamed then and continues to blame today for when their plans don't get implemented. So that was the beginning of PUP. That was our founding story. And we went on to work with Pico Bonito to create their public use plan, and their board wrote the whole plan. Each board member took 1 chapter and they wrote that up, and it became really the first public use plan, certainly of its kind, in Honduras. And it launched us off. Eventually we ended up having an alliance with UNESCO for several years with Art Peterson, who's Cecilia and Jean both know, who's a PUP member, with the World Heritage Center. And that sent us off into the next phase, where Brett managed to organize with the World UNESCO and UNEP a large project that lasted 3 years, which is basically to demonstrate how sustainable tourism could contribute to biodiversity conservation in World Heritage sites. And the project worked in 4 World Heritage sites in Mesoamerica and 2 in Indonesia. Now, and under that project, really, we took what we started with Pico Bonito and endowed it with money so that it became an actual program, the public use planning program. And the basic idea was, as we had learned in Pico Bonito, through a training program, we help park staffs and communities facilitate and write their own plans. So our role as consultants would be to help them do their work and not do their work for them. And in this time frame, you can see as a picture here, this is the staff of Komodo National Park in Indonesia, World Heritage Site. We got to see Komodo dragons. That was the fun part. And in both Komodo and Ujung Kulon, they facilitated their own plans. They wrote their own plans, and then their plans were approved by the government. So that was a really important achievement. And then when the UNESCO, these sites, we also did some work in Tikal and in La Mosquita in Rio Plátano, a biosphere reserve on Honduras. We did the Indonesian sites second, and it turns out that the Indonesian sites, once they were approved by the government, then they turned back to RARE and said, okay, we're ready to work on implementation. And at that point, RARE said, uh-oh, sorry, there's no more money in the project. We're done. We're not just done with you, we're done with this entire public use planning. Matter of fact, we're done with ecotourism in general, as RARE was moving on to a different emphasis. So we basically turned our backs on Indonesia, and that was an important lesson for the beginnings of public use planning. So I left because there was no longer any more project there. And I took the project basically with me, and Art Peterson, who was in charge of the sustainable tourism program during that project, was still very concerned that there were sites all over the world that weren't implementing their tourism plans, even if they had plans, which many of them didn't. So basically in 2006 or so, PUP and myself rejoined with Art Peterson as became a project of the World Heritage Center, a project of the Sustainable Tourism Program. And for several years, we went all around the world to different parts of in different cultures and different languages to apply the public use planning participatory methodology in Vietnam and Macedonia, in Montenegro, in Belize, and then later in Portugal, in Kenya. So we really had an opportunity to take this methodology and apply it over and over again. But it turns out we still had one big problem. None of these plans get implemented because there was no money for implementation. So it turns out in 2013, Art retired, and we decided that we needed to create our own organization. This would be the beginning of phase 3 that could propose or set up conditions more appropriate for implementation. And we became a nonprofit. And then in 2016, we became incorporated in the state of Colorado. And in 2017, we became recognized by the IRS, by the federal government of the United States, as an official tax-exempt organization like Jeans is. And we're still in phase 3, although I think we're touching on the door of phase 4 very soon. And that's what we've been discussing internally. So that's a very brief history. You can find this on our website and see all the different countries that we started in on this timeline here. Again, stop and ask questions if you have any, but that gives you a little bit of an overview of where we came from. And I think a lot of the values of frugality and participation and grassroots and community respect are still values that we have in our culture that we brought with us from RARE in those old days. Now we do have, of course, our mission and our vision. And again, this is something we'll go through only very quickly because I think these things may be changing as well. But officially, our vision is that we envision a new era of human thriving through wider, deeper linkages between people and heritage, both natural and cultural. So as an organization, we're interested in all kinds of heritage, and we're interested in people and their connection to that heritage to produce greater thriving, both by humans and as well as the places that, and the non-humans that live in those heritage areas. So our mission right now is to support communities in the protection and management of natural and cultural heritage through our learning network in evolving integral approaches and tools. And it's precisely that network and those integral tools where we're seeing a lot of development right now, where the mission may be updated. I'm not going to go through the identity value proposition on all these other things, these other elements that came out of our strategic planning a couple of years ago, at the beginning of 2021. But certainly if anyone would like to see them, I'd be more than happy to share them with you. And again, that's a question. So So there is another aspect that did come out of our strategic planning that is still very relevant. Let me share that. And this is our overall arching strategy. Okay, can you see this? So this is a more of a, what do you call this? This is an animated, so I won't give you the introduction because this is for people who don't have someone talking and explaining it. And we're using a systems map to explain how we want to effect change in the world. If you haven't seen this already. I see a chat message here. Keeping my camera off due to unstable already. I figured as much. So this very first box is basically our toolbox, right? And our toolbox is the basis of our learning community, which is the second box up here. Oops. And the learning community, the idea is the learning community will be a series of practitioners who are very much interested in working with communities to better manage heritage. And these practitioners, the work that they do in the field would be largely based on the tools in our toolbox. So by having more members in our community, they'll create more projects in the field, more opportunities to apply the tools, and generate more resources, both through contacts, through the more people you have, the more proposals you produce. So the larger our learning community, we imagine would have more project opportunities, more applications of tools in the field, and more resources, both for PUP and for the whole community. And as these applications, as there are more applications in the field of our tools in more different communities, there'll be more lessons learned generated. And the idea would be then to take those lessons learned, feed them through a research and development component, and feed them back into our toolbox to make it stronger. There will also be non-PUP members applying some of our tools as well. And not all the tools will be ours. There'll be tools from other parties as well that are in our toolbox. So the more projects, the more community heritage projects will happen. Quality of community heritage, the idea is the more applications of tools, the more examples of quality applications will appear. Poor examples will appear also, but we're especially interested in the quality, although you can learn probably just as much from the poor applications. So as we have more examples of projects in the field, we'll have more lessons learned, and we'll have outcomes, more community performance and management. So we'll have actually better examples of communities participating in management of heritage. I don't know if hopefully some of this sounds familiar to Steve's work. He's dedicated a career in collaborative and participatory methodologies in natural resource management. And of course, as we have better examples of communities managing their own heritage, there'll be community benefits that come out from this. And eventually that'll increase human thriving, the green box down here. Now, we don't actually have any indicators for human thriving yet defined. They could be the UNESCO, what do you call them, Sustainable Development Goals, or the idea of buen vivir, which is a Latin American kind of indigenous concept of living better, which might be another source of indicators. But as we demonstrate human thriving improvement, then the popularity of our program will increase, which is the box on the far left. And that'll feed back and generate more interest in non-members and also increase the membership in our action learning community. And of course, PUP will do some promotion as well, but also the more success we have in the field, it'll generate more advocates from PUP related projects, people who participated in those projects, who will help increase the popularity once again. You can see these different loops of how we envision this working. In the upper right corner, there's the loop of we'll be able, the more quality projects we have, we'll identify model projects, which will increase the influence of our PUP approach and increase the amount of applications in the field again. And last, and I don't know if it's least, but as our popularity goes up, then people will be using some of our models as policy sources, both locally, nationally, and eventually internationally. This always happens. Anytime someone has a reasonably good project, people grab onto it and start using it as examples, even if they're not good examples. This seems to happen regularly in the field. So this is our basically our impact model. And I think the most important part is how the action learning community uses the tools in our toolbox, applies them in the field, and the field generates lessons learned to go back and improve our toolbox. And those experiences in the field actually generate benefits for communities, which reverberates in different ways throughout the world and through PUP. So that's kind of a lot at once. I don't know if anybody wants to ask or briefly react to that. This is what we call the cold version of our essence, because we're generating what we're calling a hot version, which is more of an emotional narrative, which will become our new website. But for now, I know I'm going fast. See, you turned your mic on, Steve. Do you have a?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is the right time to ask it, but
Sure.
but just from your perspective, John, what are your and PUP's biggest challenges to achieving this vision? What?
Well, great. I think right now our biggest investment is in the toolbox and in the action learning community. Those are the two foundational pillars. And if those can be raised, I think a lot of the rest of this will come much easier. But it's building this toolbox, and there's a whole theory of where we are on that. And toolbox isn't even what we're going to call it. Is going to be a very different model than almost all toolboxes on the internet. And the Action Learning Network, which would also be a community of practice, will be tightly linked to it. So if we can get to the threshold, the critical mass, where we can launch this toolbox basically as a business that's financially sustainable and generate enough resources that we can launch the learning network or the learning community, that would be a major achievement for a small organization. So, and again, that's where we're investing heavily now. That's the basis of everything else. And because PUP, our current mission and things don't reflect that very strongly, that's where we're going to probably update the mission, maybe update the name to really reorganize around this toolbox in the action learning community. Cecilia.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Just a question. When you say that it will be relaunched as a business, how will that work? How will that be different from the consortium model that you have now?
Right. Well, it'd be kind of a business model. It'll still be a nonprofit. The basic idea is that it would generate its own income so that it will be financially sustainable and potentially even generate additional income for the organization itself. So it would be a paid service. That would be kind of the business aspect. But in order for people to pay for it, to want to pay for it, it's got to provide a service that they're willing to pay for. So that's kind of the business side of it. And as you might know, but other people here might not know, we've been working closely with the model of mindtools.com. And mindtools is a business that does offer subscription-based payment access to their toolbox. And we've been in communication with the founding CEO, who is now retired, who's given us great insights into what we need. And we've done a lot of market analysis of at least what other toolboxes are out there on the internet. And we can see a very consistent pattern of failure all across the internet, in all fields, for free and open toolboxes, because they have no sustainable income and thus fade away. And there are some newer ones like Panorama, which which is also open and free, but has a lot of soft money. So we'll have to see how long they can continue operating without generating any income, or whether they will succumb to the same problem. This is an IUCN project that has a lot of partners. And it's a very nice format, but they're following the same model that all the other failed toolboxes do. So we want to follow a different model. But that's challenging for a nonprofit, right? To take a business perspective, but essential for this to work. So without going into too much detail, we have a whole concept note on that paper, which is expanding. It's over 20 pages. So there's a lot more to say, but I'm not going to say that here. But any more thoughts on this before I shut this for the moment? This was in your reading packet, if you will, so you certainly can go back and look at it more slowly. It's made to not be narrated. It's a PowerPoint show. Let me just get that off my screen. All right. You also probably know that PUP is based on, we've adopted formally integral theory. And integral theory is basically a theory that links together and combines all other theories and schools of practice and spiritual pursuits and wisdom traditions into one. I'm certainly not going to discuss what integral theory is here, but for anyone who is familiar with the book that Steve McCool and I published, it kind of came out of our experiences at RARE and UNESCO. The book is based on integral theory, and it's really the heart of our holistic approach. And if you haven't read it, I certainly recommend you do. I know a few of you do have this copy. And it basically expounds upon why most plans and programs tend to fail, and how taking a holistic approach can transcend a lot of those barriers. And it draws upon many different fields, many different disciplines throughout humanity, throughout the world, and thus in a way is a source of many tools and approaches, which we'll be able to use as a source for many years to come in our toolbox. But it is sort of the basis behind the PUP approach that grew out of RARE. And a lot of the examples come from our experiences then. As a matter of fact, this picture on the front cover is from Ohrid in Macedonia, where I was with UNESCO, but not with PUP. And we really tried to take a global approach and not an American perspective, which is kind of a challenging sometimes when you have two Americans writing it. So yes, so it's a very, PUP tries to be transdisciplinary, that is integrating all disciplines. So there's just kind of one giant discipline, if you will, and not break it up into the natural and cultural sciences and the social sciences, even though that's reality today, in this integral holistic approach. And our toolbox will be based on a lot of integral principles and approaches as well, like different kinds of worldviews. How do those influence people who are using the different tools and the communities that they're working with? You know, research and learning have always been a part of PUP. They go way back to the early days when we did some pretty hefty self-evaluations of our nature guide training and our public use planning. And I'd like to think that that learning and that self-exploration and publishing as well have continued to be an important part of PUP. If you go to the webpage on publications, you'll see that PUP members produce a lot of materials, and we try to be really self-reflective. And I think this latest round of strategic planning that we had in June is another indication that we're digging deep into our essence and overturning things that we no longer want. So, and that in order to have an R&D component and to learn from field, we will have to continue with this strong research and development aspect that PUP has always had, and all the tools that we've produced over the years since we were part of RARE. And I guess I should mention, because we've produced so many tools over the years, we kind of figured, instead of trying to do them on a project by project basis, is there a way we can make better value for society by bringing these tools together in a coherent way and making them available to the global community? And that's kind of the origin of this toolbox. So traditionally, PUP has kind of worked in 3 program areas, and one of them is this public use planning, which is the name where the name PUP comes from, right? PUP, public use planning, which is visitor use planning. But we've gone on to do quite a bit more than that. So then the word PUP is a little outdated. It's kind of like the name of RARE. You know, RARE used to be Rare Animal Relief Effort, but it's been like 3 decades since that's been an accurate description of what RARE is. But they keep the name for historical reasons, although they've kind of modified it a few times. So the public use planning part has been central to everything that we do. Heritage interpretation has also been, since the very beginning at RARE, another really strong area. We've done kind of holistic trainings in countries throughout Latin America. And we've developed pretty significant body of work, many graduates, and we do it in a way that nobody else does it consequently, we have now a central role in interpretation in Latin America. We help found the Mexican Association for Interpretation, which is the only interpretation association in Latin America. My wife and I last year published the first real textbook about heritage interpretation with a lot of PUP's resources and help. PUP's logo is on the back cover, in fact. Guess I don't have a copy at my fingertips here, but we co-sponsored and organized in 2018 the very first Latin American-wide Congress on heritage interpretation. So we've done a lot and we're very well connected in that area. And our PUP members are now the two top people in the national parks in Colombia. They're in charge of interpretation for the entire park system. So that's another important achievement. One of our tools, the interpretive framework, has been adopted by the government of Colombia. Anyway, suffice it to say that especially in Latin America, we've played a very important role in interpretation development. And I mentioned, and then the toolbox and making tools is the third big area that we've done a lot of work in ever since we were part of RARE, making tools, training manuals, evaluation tools, new forms of planning, participatory planning has all been kind of the strength of what PUP has done for many years. So those are the general program areas. I think as we move on to this toolbox approach, PUP itself probably won't be doing as much field planning, but we'll be working through the action learning community to use these tools in the field and support practitioners in doing it. Right now, because we have no paid staff, to some degree, we have to follow the money and the opportunities. But again, part of to answer your question, Steve, is, once our action learning community and toolbox are actually operational, by then, hopefully we can generate income to have a full-time executive director. And then whoever that person is no longer dependent on projects to survive, or at least whatever projects appear, right? Because right now we have people who are technical service members like Andres and Steve. And when projects arise, or if you can bring projects to PUP, then there's an opportunity to make money. And that's what TSM folks do is, they're open to participating financially in projects. In any event, so those are basically the program areas. I'll stop and give you a second before I move on to the structure and the membership, the internal operation of PUP, if anyone has something they want to ask or comment. All right, if not, then the original reason why PUP became a membership organization is because when we left UNESCO, and UNESCO, of course, opened doors for us, and we needed that because we have a different kind of paradigm, a different kind of approach to protected area management and planning. So without UNESCO, how are we going to open doors to this new counter paradigm? And the idea was, well, by being a membership organization, we can combine many voices into one. And some of those voices would be louder than others, such as Steve McCool, who is known throughout the world, and Sam Ham, who are both our advisors emeriti now. And open doors by being a membership. And indeed, by being a membership organization, I think we have been able to facilitate certain projects that otherwise we would not have been able to do. So the different membership categories that we currently have, and we have most of them represented here, is we have our directors, our board of directors, we have our advisors, we have staff, both paid and commission-based. We have country representatives who are basically technical service members like Andres and Steve, but they are the ambassadors for PUP in the particular countries where they live. They are the point of the lance, if you will, and they oftentimes would take the first role in facilitating and participating projects that we have in their countries. And then we have general members, and these are folks who just support the mission but don't participate in any projects. Like when you hear that the Nature Conservancy or World Wildlife Fund have 1 million members, those are what we call general members. Just because they like the idea, they pay us $30 a year. We try to involve them, give them a few different benefits, but essentially people join at that level because they just like the idea of what PUP is all about. to give you a little bit of idea of, this is our what we call our consortium board of directors. For at least for the Americans, you know how the Congress says they have the 101st Congress and the 102nd, and you have your freshmen. Well, we kind of have the same thing. We've now gone through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 board groups, if you will, starting from the initial inaugural board up to a current board of 6 members. And you can see in the lower box, we keep a little history of our officers. And then on the second sheet, we have the history of our advisors, and 2 of them, which the ones in pink, have become emeritus. So that's another useful document that just keeps track of some of our past. I'm not going to spend too much time on that right now, though. As we keep going through these documents, I have to close them. So we have actual country offices, if you will, in 4 countries: Mexico, Colombia, Costa Rica, and the United States. Our official address is currently in Centennial, Colorado, just outside of Denver, although that's going to change very soon. We have a memorandum of understanding with a nonprofit in Mexico that was actually created to represent PUP in Mexico. So their office is our office, and they officially represent us in that country. Similarly, in Colombia, there's a national nonprofit with whom we have an MOU and have done a lot of work over the past 12 years. And they are our official representative, and everything we do in Colombia goes through them. Normally, unless, of course, they don't want to be involved in a particular effort. Here in Costa Rica, I guess you're looking at the Costa Rican office. It's a very nice office, but when it rains, we get all wet. And I'm the director of the Costa Rican office. So those are the 4 countries. And in 3 other countries, we have country representatives who officially represent PUP, but they don't actually have any offices because we don't have an MOU with any organization. And that's Peru, Venezuela, and Honduras. We've had country representatives in Indonesia and in India and Vietnam in different times. And those people come and they go. So, but to have an actual country office, it requires an MOU or somebody like me who are actually sitting in an office. The next idea I wanted to share with you, and again, you may have already seen this because I just submitted it very recently to the membership, is our organizational chart. We tried not to make it into a hierarchical format like most organizations do, because we're really not hierarchical. We're pretty horizontal as an organization. See the board of directors in the middle, the advisors, the staff. This has just recently been updated. So everybody here is included. You can see Andres, your name is second to bottom, and Steve is on the bottom, and that's not hierarchical. That's just how the program that we use lays them out. So this isn't that I wanted everyone to kind of read the details, but once again, kind of an idea of this. Don't include general student, well, it mentions general student members above, but we don't actually list them all because those people change all the time too. And my father-in-law is probably calling now because he always calls during meetings. And Marisol, one of our PUP members, can come and answer it in just a moment. So I will move on from this. Another important aspect of our organization, and most of you are already aware of this, is the idea of action teams. Most people who are familiar with American nonprofits understand the concept of board committees, and probably in other countries as well. And I think they probably have them in Latin America. Where board committees in the United States typically are groups of boards of directors that meet on a certain topic. In the case of PUP, we have action teams, which means that they're sort of like board committees, but anybody in the organization can join. And we encourage people from throughout the organization to join the different action teams, because this is really where a lot of the action occurs, and they generate a lot of the ideas that then go to the board for approval. Not always for approval either. Our first one is the communications action team. And this group consists of folks and their work on the annual report. They're reviewing press releases. They'll be in charge of the new website design. So a lot of our communication tools will be through the communication action team. I'm assuming everyone can see what's on the screen pretty clearly. The next one is the integral tools action team. And this is the team that's basically, we're building the toolbox concept right now. And we certainly need more help here for anyone who's interested in this concept. Then after that, we have the fundraising team, which hasn't really met yet, but it's there. Then the financial action team, led by Jean. And this financial action team is basically trying to modernize PUP's financial management technology and procedures, bring us up to good standard practices in the nonprofit community in the United States, which we are not at, but hopefully we will be by much closer by the end of this year. Then there's the Action Learning Community Action Team, which probably shouldn't be called LNAT anymore. Should be called ALCAT. And Cecilia is on this team, and it's chaired by Sherwood and Ellen. This will work very closely with the integral tools. Then the Latin American interpretation, which isn't that functional. It's really basically, I saw a thumb up by Cecilia. It's basically, the idea is to do a Latin American assessment of interpretation. It's starting in Costa Rica with Marisol, because she's got funding to do this project through the University of Costa Rica. And then the methodology is being followed up in Mexico with Antonieta Jimenez, who's a longtime member of PUP since 2017, and I'm kind of an observer. We're not really taking on new members to this group yet, because its focus is very narrowly on developing a methodology for this assessment to take place in Latin American countries. So we encourage everybody to join a team. You're certainly welcome to, Zach, but of course your value as the secretary is immense, just as the secretary, so I don't want to, only if you see something that really makes you excited and you want to spend more time with PUP. Andres, I guess you just joined, and I thought I added your name. Which one did you say you were going to join? The Action Learning team, right? So I think you were here. Whoops, I just screwed that up. And certainly, Steve, we would encourage you to join one too, if any of this sounds exciting to you. We certainly have a lot of experience that we could benefit from. Should the muse arise, you're welcome to study that. But although you might be good on the tools team, that's for sure. In any event,
either tools or fundraising would be the ones I would gravitate towards. But yeah, let me think about it. And
sure.
see
Fundraising could really use you, because again, fundraising hasn't actually operated yet. And the membership has kind of been moving around. We just split fundraising from the financial action team, because the financial action team's goal is much more specific. It's to develop the technology part of the methodology of managing our funds, which ultimately will make us capable of managing larger grants in the future. But yeah, you don't have to answer me now. I'm not asking now, but that's certainly a group that needs some more help fundraising. Both of them do.
Mm-hmm.
But once the integral tools gets to a point where we're trying to move towards a large grant proposal, that's kind of what we're doing, so that we can get the seed money to build the toolbox. And we already have a fiscal agent, which is one of our organizational members, the Consensus Building Institute, and we'll be signing an MOU with them in the coming weeks. Well, they're going to do more than fiscal agent. They're going to participate. They're a large nonprofit with the capability of managing large grants, which we cannot.
What's the name, John? What's the name of that organization again?
The Consensus Building Institute. They're actually one of the 3 founding organizations of PUP in 2013. If you go to cbi.org, they've been really, really important for our development. There's an office of CBI in Santiago, so not too far from Andres. I guess too far to walk, but and the person there is Betsy Fireman, who's in the ALCAT, the Action Learning Team. Alrighty. So that's it for the action teams. Any questions or reactions before we're moving on? Okay. I try to move fairly quickly because, again, I want to respect the time that I declared. All PUP members are eligible to participate. And generally, if an action team doesn't have a coordinator, then it doesn't work. So sometimes they sit there with name only, and takes a while before before there's a coordinator and it operates. The next section, this is more for Jean, but I think we can go through this quickly because you're quite familiar with nonprofit board operation in the United States, but not everybody is. Sometimes we get board members from other parts of the world. So it's important to emphasize, and again, Jean, you can just nod, but that in a nonprofit in the United States, board members are the legal owners of the corporation, of the organization. And they're responsible legally for its operation, its governance, and revenue, and the finances of that. So they can be sued, although we have insurance, so not much is important. And so as somebody who comes in from another country doesn't really understand oftentimes what that means to be the legal owner of an organization. It's important that directors realize that they do not represent the organizations to which they belong. Jean is not here representing the Roadrunners of America. She's only representing herself. That's another important legal aspect. Another important aspect, which isn't legal, is that we have no paid development staff at the moment. So the board has to play, all boards do play a role in fundraising. In good theory, in our case, the board should play even a larger role in fundraising than a normal board would with a paid staff. I don't know if you'd agree with that, Jean, but that's our understanding, but that's not our practice, unfortunately. So the board is a more active board in the sense of developing the systems that need to operate and then handing those over to the organization to operate them. That's the theory of more of an action board rather than just a policy board. In this case, to some degree, like in the action team, the integral tools action team, the board member who's on that team is very hands-on. It has to be because we need as many hands as we can to develop it. So it's not a policy role, it's an actual development role as well. We understand that directors are volunteers and they're in most cases, they're not experts in nonprofit management. Jean, you're the only one, again, I think, who has significant experience in nonprofit management. And that's a great value for us, but most nonprofit directors, I think, in the country don't necessarily have that experience. Some of them do. So our job is also to educate our board members about how a nonprofit operates and train them as well. Another really important concept is the idea of standards. Sometimes people think just because they're volunteers, they're donating their time, so that way they don't really have to be, they can be apathetic, they don't have to come to the meetings if they don't want, because they're donating their time and they're important people. That doesn't work. That's a great that's a great formula for a failure of a nonprofit, is when people take that attitude that because you're a volunteer, you can offer low standards and participate when you want to. We keep, for example, a very close track of attendance of all our board directors, and we're always looking for new systems to increase accountability, including signing a social contract at the very beginning of the term, which is a best practice in a lot of organizations. So it's always a challenge to try and increase that, to have a higher performing versus a lower performing board. And I think it's the difference between a mature and a less mature nonprofit. So the board members, basically, I'll speak to Eugene, there's one board member, one meeting a month, and there's discussions that occur between the meetings. Attendance is mandatory. We do technically have in our bylaws a minimum amount of attendance. We don't usually invoke that unless we have a serious problem. And especially if people have a good reason that they can't show. That happens to everybody. We totally understand that. And then, of course, there's the monthly action team meetings as well that we expect all board members to participate in, at least one. So those are some of the expectations and of the board, at least our board in our organization. I mean, I don't think they're that divergent from a lot of nonprofit boards. I don't know, Gene, if you see anything that the way we operate yet that you see is particularly different from other nonprofit boards. I'm not sure what that would be.
Pretty standard.
Yeah, and maybe it's probably good and bad in some ways, because I think we can always increase our performance level, and that's the kind of the challenge. We have a board meeting cycle. I'll say it, because Zach is just learning it right now. But the idea is that the board, after every meeting, you get the meeting notes within a week, ideally, and that happened. It's the first time in several months. Thank you so much, Zach. And then the idea is you get the board packet no earlier than a week before the next meeting. The system automatically sends out a one-click registration. We ask that all board members register that they're coming or they're not going, at least, well, ideally 48 hours in advance, so that we can ensure whether we have quorum or not. Quorum being just simple majority. So we have 6 now, so that's 4 people. And then the system automatically sends out reminders 1 week in advance, 1 day in advance, and exactly when the meeting is starting. Oh, and that's something I didn't show you, Zach, how to create events. So we'll have to do that. But right now, all the board meetings are created till the end of the year, so there's no rush to show you that. And then there's electronic voting, which is something neither Gene or Zach have seen yet, but we have on our Wild Apricot platform, secure electronic voting with the whole policy and how to operate it. It's a little too much policy, but sometimes issues come up where we don't need to spend time in a board meeting talking about them, because oftentimes they're no-brainers. And we do have an online forum, so some of those things can actually be discussed online. And we probably should be using that more for some of the items to save time in board meetings. But we have used e-votes in the past. They're especially useful for approving new directors or new advisors once everyone pretty much already agrees. The board agreement document, well, you've already seen that, Gene, but very briefly for everybody else, this is a document that says what the expectations are of board members. Each board director pledges a certain amount that they're going to donate to the organization at that time. It also says what the organization is obliged to do for the board directors. We have to offer insurance, we have to offer training, we have to give different kinds of support. So it's a social, not legally binding contract, but hopefully makes the expectations very clear about what a board director is and should be doing. Excuse me. And again, Gene is the only one who's seen that document, but anyone else certainly welcome to if they'd like to. Advisors. Now, advisors do not have any legal or financial obligation to the organization. They are described in our bylaws. We do ask that they all serve on at least one action team. I've already showed you who the advisors are, and very recently, Allison Ormsby, who was a former board member, has offered to coordinate the advisors by having at least 2 yearly semi-annual meetings and trying to encourage advisors to join action teams and to make some other kind of contribution, whether it's a webinar or something small during the year. And of course, advisors are always available to be requested to advise. That's kind of the minimum, is that they're available to advise. They don't participate in projects, or at least not generally, they don't participate in paid projects. Most advisors are already very well established people, sometimes retired. So participating in financially in projects is not an interest so far that our advisors have in general. But we do have, what do you call those? Conflict of interest procedures. As a matter of fact, there's a conflict of interest document that all advisors and directors have to sign. I know you haven't signed it yet, Gene. We're a little bit behind on that. You haven't because we haven't sent it to you. But we are, as you know, legally responsible for having people sign those. So we really need to get on that.
Don't feel bad. That's always like an afterthought in my organization too. You know, like 6 months later, I'm like, oh God, all those little details.
Well, partly because traditionally that's been the secretary's job, and we haven't had a secretary for months. So Zach and I will coordinate when he gets back from Peru and get those. Then you're going to have to fill it out again in next January. So that is a legal requirement. Anyway, that's it for advisors. Hopefully nothing there sounds new to you, Cecilia. The next topic was briefly to talk about finances. Okay, thumbs up. I love it. Still there, I believe. And one way to start with that would be to, and if people haven't gone to our annual report page, which is this on our website, I encourage you to. It is a good way to see the history and changing of PUP. By going through our annual plans, tend to be very short. They don't have a lot of text. They have a lot of graphics. So they are able to get a good quick overview of what PUP is. So in our most recent one, and I think I'll just switch here. The 2021 annual report always usually has a board chair message at the beginning. You can very quickly understand by looking at our financials that we're a very small organization in terms of finances for the moment. Last year, which of course was a pandemic year, and it did make a little bit of a difference in our case because we don't have too many field projects during the pandemic. We had $7,000 US dollars of revenue, which is not very much, and $5,500 of expenses. So just that alone gives you an idea of the scale of the organization. Although another way to measure us is the number of members. I'm oftentimes asked, how many members do you have? And of course, it's not a simple answer because we have different membership levels. At any given time, there's a certain percentage of people who are whose membership have lapsed. But right now it's between 75 and 80 people, and somewhere around 6 or 7 organizations are members of PUP. So that's a different way to measure it. Another way to measure, which I'm not sure if it's in this one. Well, in past ones, I guess it didn't make it into this one. We look at the total amount of money that our projects bring in, but oftentimes are managed by our partners and not us. So if you look at that, then the numbers are up in the high 70s, 80s, 90s of thousands of dollars, usually per year. Because typically our model has been to have partner organizations manage projects on our behalf. This allows PUP to keep a very small central plant, if you will, and it means spreading the benefits out to our membership. So whether or not that's something we're going to continue in the future, that has been the model for the last 6 or 7 years, is to let our larger partners manage projects on our behalf. No problem, Cecilia. And even smaller projects, like small projects, sometimes projects are so small in Colombia, it's not even worth our being involved financially. So the Colombians or the Mexicans will manage those projects and just subcontract PUP, if you will. So that happens a bit. So again, there's not a lot. Jean is in charge. She's now the treasurer of the board. So I don't need to, well, maybe I do, I don't know, but not in this space, talk about the finances. It's just to give you a brief idea of what kind of finances we're dealing with at this moment. So membership has always been our largest source of income. It's our only consistent source of income besides board director donations. PUP makes some money from commission overhead off of projects. That varies. We now started making money from Amazon Smile, but that's not very much. So those are the different ways. And then of course, being a virtual organization, we have a number of different virtual subscriptions. Actually, even non-virtual organizations have the same subscriptions. to keep us going. We don't pay rent, of course, and we don't pay a lot of the overhead that an organization with a physical building has, which is kind of a nice thing. Again, it has its pluses and minuses, being a 100% virtual organization. It does mean we should stay on top of virtual technologies, though, as you would imagine, and we're always trying to increase. So our next virtual technology would be QuickBooks, so that we can move all of our financial management online. And that's going to be a big step for us. Any questions about finances? Understanding that it was a very, very brief overview. Okay, if not, then the next thing I'd like to talk about is our communication channels. And again, this is especially relevant for the director, and I suppose for Zach too. The formal communications are email. When we send out email through our platform, our Wild Apricot platform, those are totally official. And we track them too, so we know who opens them and who doesn't open them. We do have listservs as well, which are also formal. So if we send something on a listserv to the board of directors, for example, that's considered an official communication. We can't track those who opens those, though. We have a WhatsApp group, and any PUP member, mostly our leadership team, but other PUP members who are active can certainly join the WhatsApp group. It's not official. It is a way to quickly update people. I just put a photograph in the WhatsApp group for the exec of this particular onboarding session having just started. But if anybody, well, Cecilia is on it. I think Zach, you're on it. Aren't you on it now? Yeah, you should be. And Jean, of course, is on it too. So that's for good, quick communication. We have at pupconsortium.net aliases and email accounts. We just created an alias for both Jean and Zach. We have treasurer at PUP and secretary at PUP. And if anyone has a reason to create an inbox, an actual email box, we can do that. We have our PUP notes, which currently is not publishing because we need an editor. But this is our newsletter. And yeah, we haven't been publishing for a year now, really. Time goes by. I haven't made it an emphasis. We do pay the editor a small amount on a commission and issue by issue basis. So it is technically a paid job. And we do need to find somebody else to continue on with that. That's not just for members, that's for non-members as well. We have a Facebook page. So if anyone hasn't visited our Facebook page, and we have a YouTube channel. We are on LinkedIn, but I don't really post much in LinkedIn at the moment. I do have a Twitter account, but I don't use that. Just too many media for me. I need more help. But I do sort of use the Facebook regularly, and we do post a lot of stuff on YouTube, like the onboarding sessions, for example, and a lot of training videos, webinars that PUP co-sponsors. There's a lot of good content, I think, on our YouTube channel as well. We do have a couple other kinds of things that we probably, matter of fact, I forgot to put one here in my list. Hold on one second, I want to add this because I've been updating my. Okay. So we do have a number of other periodicals, if you will. One is you probably have all seen this by now, the project matrix, which gets updated every 2 months. And this is a complete list, or a pretty complete list of all our projects, both internal and external, meaning internal development projects as well as projects in the field. And it lists them. Oops, this is, of course, I think I forgot this should say 2022. There. So it lists them on the left-hand column. There's a status. They're either underway, it's an idea that's developing, it's completed, it's just a prospect, or it didn't happen and it basically dropped. The red text means that this is new text since the last edition, so you can quickly see what's been added since the last time. It tells you where the region is, who the donor client is, if there is one, who the project lead, who is the second lead or the support, and then a brief description. So this is a really good way to get an overview of what PUP's working on at any time. And like I said, I try to update this every 2 months. It has a sister document too, which I didn't open, but it's called the project projection. This is something I learned at Rare, but probably don't use it as well, where we list the projects, potential projects, with an estimated percentage of the likelihood that it's going to happen, and then an estimated amount of money that would bring in. So then we multiply the amount estimated budget by the estimated likelihood that it'll happen to get an estimated amount of how much money projects would bring in for PUP in a given year. And we update that every 2 months as well. So it's a kind of a financial planning tool that it goes along with this one. And Gene, you're probably more aware of how to use that other tool better than I am. So we've only just started that like this year. But to help us do better financial projections. So anyway, after every board meeting that this is updated, I send it out to the whole membership. So if you haven't seen it, you certainly will in the near future. So we have the project matrix. We have quarterly financial reports. We don't do financial reports more frequently, Gene, just because we don't have a lot of cash flow, right? We don't have paid staff, so there really wasn't a need to do it with a greater frequency than that. So as treasurer, you can decide if you want to keep it that way or not. Of course, we have our annual financial report, which goes into our annual report. And we have PUP dates, which is our way of saying press releases. You know, if we change the name and no longer have PUP, I think that'll be the part that'll most hurt losing is the name PUP date. But anyway, not a big deal. So those are the communication channels that PUP uses right now. And of course, onboarding sessions that happen infrequently. Or any thoughts or comments? We certainly want to have more communication with our membership. We don't have a membership manager right now. And I think that's an important part of keeping membership engaged. But you've probably all seen a certain frequency of messages going out to the membership for different reasons. Matter of fact, we just released a press release yesterday announcing Gene. You should have all got that because our press release person sent that. Now I need to put that on our Facebook page, and it's already on our website. So if you go to our homepage, you'll see the PUP dates, at least the top 3 or 4, as well as events, if we have any planned that are public facing, and there aren't any listed right now. So basically the last part of the onboarding, so we have 15 minutes left, would to give you a brief tour of our file server and who has access to what parts. So I'm going to start with a top level view. Let's get to that. And share that with you. Okay, so our file server is on Google Drive. You know, we're legally obliged to have a file server, which I think in it's not called a file server in Colorado state law. It's just called what's it called? Anyway, the archives or whatever. I forget the term now because I'm so used to saying file server. But so this is, you can see the top level here, and we have a folder for our website, our Spanish webinars, which we don't offer anymore. So I'm probably going to have to refile that inside somebody else's folder to keep it simple. We have a folder for all members have access. And I should mention that if you go to our website and then you go to About, and then you go to File Server, if you're signed in and you're a member, then it'll send you to this Google. It'll automatically. If you're of the leadership, an advisor, an officer, or a director, you'll see an additional link there that everyone else cannot see. And that'll send you to the leadership folder. And then if you're not signed in, there's a button that's just for the general public, and they'll send you to general public. So I guess I'll actually start there. Well, so in general public, and some of the stuff needs to be updated, but you have promotional documents that everyone can see. Matter of fact, we encourage you to see them. We have our annual reports, although there's not, these are what get linked to our website. Anyway, these are documents that we encourage the general public to check out. So anyone can get there from our website. Members only, this is all members, but not the general public, and other different kinds of things are PUP directory history, the PUP manual in English. It's our largest tool that we've ever made. Spent many years at Rare building it. The updated org chart, and then some older files too, some official documents that all PUP members can have access to, MOUs, our official document with Colorado's Department of State, our bylaws, so articles of incorporation. So these are things that any PUP member can access if they want to. And I have to send reminders every now and then, otherwise people don't know they have access to it. But they have to be signed into Wild Apricot in order to access these, unless somebody gives them the link, because Google Docs doesn't have great protection in that way. So after members, then we have, I guess, the action teams. So here we have membership action team, which doesn't exist anymore. That's actually now part of the, so I'm going to put this in here now, part of the action learning community, the integral toolbox, all the financial things. And Jean, I don't know if you've already looked through this yet, but this is certainly, why is there nothing in there? Oh, because that's that's for the financial action team. This is new. I'll show you in a second. There's another financial folder which is outside of this, which is where you would have to go through it. The communications action team, PUP notes and stuff, and the action learning team, and then some old stuff. So everybody who's on an action team has access to these. Matter of fact, Andres, I need to give you access to this if I haven't done that already. You should have got an email. If you didn't, then I haven't. Here's the financial folder, and the financial folder is should only be the treasurer, Clark, or the people who are on the financial action team are the only people who have access. And Trace has access to the whole website for historical reasons, but Clark, Jean, yeah, Jean, you already have access to it. So this has all of our reports and all our budgets and, well, all the financial, the invoices, receipts, our reports from Amazon Smile, the things that you'd expect to be in a financial folder. And I'm sure, Jean, you're going to want to reorganize this. And I'm sure there's, and I know Zach, if he could get his hands on it, would want to reorganize it as well, because he's a reorganizer. And I'm totally open to all of that. So anyway, I think we'll need to spend a little more, or you'll need to spend a little more time to just see the contents. I don't think anything here would surprise you, but it's important to know what we have and what we don't have. And then finally, in the leadership folder, and only advisors, directors, and executives have access to this folder. Is all our terms of reference and our contracts, staff contracts, and contracts for projects. Strategic planning documents, although some of that can probably be moved to members only. Logos, our entire letter database, insurance information, board recruitment, onboarding, exit interview stuff, minutes. So Zach has access to some of that, our advisor, and some old useless documents like a PUP time zone map, which I don't even know what that is. I imagine that's where people are in different time zones back in 2018. And of course, Jean has access. So that is basically our file server. Cecilia, you have a question?
Yeah, just wondering about your active, because I would assume that you don't want everyone to have editor rights.
Right.
So for the protection of, yeah. So where is that?
Where is what? Sorry.
That's governance of. Do you have like a document on access policy as part of your governance documents?
We have, yes, we have
Like for instance, the advisors have a different type of access and general members have the other access.
I'm not sure if it might be in our policy manual. Wait, she just disappeared. Anyway, to answer your question, it might be in our policy manual who has access to which folders. I'm not sure if it's written down. And I'll have to send that answer to Cecilia later. And the policy manual itself, I sent you all the link in the reading. And I guess, is that here? The PUP policy manual. So that's certainly something that at least all directors should be familiar with. We don't update it with enough rapidity. Oh, Cecilia, you're back. The answer to your question was that I'm not sure if it's written down, although it might be in the PUP policy manual, but it's not something that I've looked at lately. If it's not written down, arguably it should be, because it is definitely a security issue. We do have another important document that's outdated. No, stop apologizing. Don't apologize for apologizing. Is what we call a PUP asset control plan. I don't know what normal nonprofits do, Jean, in terms of who has access to our different assets and things. All of the different kinds of accounts that we have, including like a free doodle account. Who has those passwords for all of those? And again, this hasn't been updated in a while, but I think this is a useful thing to have. You know, who has all the passwords and who, if somebody dies, you know, who else has access to something? Or if somebody dies and nobody even knows that there is a doodle account in PUP's name. So
We call that our kidnap by alien scenario. So no one has to die.
nobody, what'd you say? Oh, no one has to die.
Right. That's why it's our kidnap by alien scenario.
Right. If you get
But yeah,
kidnapped by
that's
an
pretty
alien.
standard to have, you know, like your inventory.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, that's what we have, and we definitely need to work on because I think we even made just a recent decision at the last board meeting that all of the accounts should be in the name of treasurer at, or at least the economic accounts, financial accounts. So get back to that. And we can change it to the kidnap by an alien plan too. Good to see that you're pro aliens. We're an international organization. I don't know if we're intergalactic, but we should be. So anyway, that is basically the our file server. And that is basically what I wanted to cover in this time. And we're now at 1 hour and 26 minutes. So I've done this before. And I want to open this now for questions that you may have, and also recommendations that you have. I don't know if you're looking at my screen, but I keep a record of recommendations people make to make these onboarding sessions better. So I'm opening to any question, but also any recommendation you have that you think would make this onboarding session better and more useful. I think we're going to keep it directed towards directors, but I think you'll all agree there's a lot of information here that's useful for everybody. So in the last couple remaining minutes.
Yeah, John, I think like throwing the links for those Google Drives into chat. So, because you know, like when you look at stuff on screen, it's super hard to see. So to kind of follow along is helpful.
Not sure I understand what you mean.
There's just your Google Doc links, like throwing them in chat. So.
Oh, yeah, I mean, most of this you already have. Or what you're saying, in addition to the fact that you already have it. Anytime.
Yeah, it just makes it a quick reference.
Oh, okay. So for the file server in particular, or in everything?
Yeah.
Okay. So for the tour, I can do that next time. Actually, it says in my notes, have everyone actually go to this page and sign in. So that's how I used to do it, which would have been kind of what you just said.
Yeah.
Rather than watch me do it, you go along and do it with me. At least for directors. So yeah, good point. I didn't read my notes carefully enough. Okay, other questions or suggestions? Andres, how would this have been better for you? Is there something you would like to know about PUP that I didn't say?
I think for the first meeting was good. Yesterday I read a couple of documents that you just showed, so I kind of have an idea.
Okay, good.
So I'm gonna get more into it.
Yep. And I should say to Steve and Andres, we have an open invitation policy. Any PUP member can go to a board meeting if they like. Very rarely do we have anything confidential where we ask you to leave. So certainly if you'd like to come and visit, drop in at any time, you're generally welcome to. The only time that I could think where that might not be is if we're voting on a director or something like that. But even that, it's hard to imagine. Only the people first, the candidate shouldn't be there, but the results are made known soon thereafter. So our board meetings are every second Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern time.
I don't know, John, if you can say something about the changing that will have the organization. Like you say, you are ending the third phase of PUP historical.
I mean, we haven't talked about this, but I think the fourth phase will be the new emphasis on this toolbox and action learning community. It's several years in the coming where we've known for a while that tools are important. We've known we wanted to have a learning network since our last strategic planning in the beginning of 2021. And it's now really solidifying. The vision is becoming much clearer. And I think it's going to have, we'll probably modify our mission, maybe the name, the tagline. I mean, we'll be doing what we have been doing, but doing it in a more concerted, structured way. So I think that will be phase 4. And I suspect in the very near future, we're going to have a proposal to update the mission so that it'll be something like, PUP will support organizations to help them better work with communities for heritage management and protection through our toolbox and action learning community. It's not a major change, but the toolbox will be designed to targeting organizations more than individuals. Business to business model. And that's another business aspect that I didn't mention, but Mind Tools has shown the value of that. And nobody in the field, in heritage field, does that at all. Not even Panorama from IUCN or UNESCO has nothing like that. So it's a big open niche that we could fill. Good question. Anything else?
No, I found it useful, John, on
Great.
just the format and get a better feel for how PUP works and where we can try to engage and get involved more deeply.
Yeah, no, do stop by a board meeting just to check it out. Steve, you probably know most of the people there already anyway.
Yeah, I think I would enjoy doing that.
And yeah, we strongly encourage everybody at PUP to be involved. People enter as general members, but I'm always looking for ways to get them more involved too.
Has the board played around with titles? Just brainstorming. I mean, if you did move on from the PUP, are there any?
Well, a previous board member who stepped down. He had health problems. Was pretty strong on the need to change the name. And that was even before we had this emphasis now. So even more so now, arguing that PUP doesn't really mean anything to most people. And, it is kind of, it's not public use planning anymore. And if we're going to create a new identity, we should have a new name. So no, we haven't had a formal discussion, although internal to the Integral Toolbox Action Team, we've been, like just 2 days ago, we spent a lot of time talking about the name and the identity, the experience that we want people to have for the toolbox. And I think that name will reflect on the PUP name too. Is that true? That's interesting, Cecilia. There's also we don't own the name, but I don't, you can see here, I don't know if you can see that, but there's a political party in Belize. This is their headquarters. It says PUP headquarters. It doesn't refer to us. But the word PUP is used in a lot of ways. But so yeah, so pretty soon we're going to be making a proposal. As soon as we get out of the toolbox committee, then we'll probably make a proposal to the board, because we really feel like a few of these foundational things are really necessary for us to move forward. Then what the name is going to be, what the mission is going to be, because all these things are going to go into documents that we need to continue building, like MOUs. And until we have clarity on that, it's just this confusion is a little harder. So hopefully very soon. Alrighty. Well then, I thank you all for coming. This was a great attendance, and we finished right on time. I'm about to go to an amusement park with my son and wife. So
Excellent.
Hey, John, I was going to ask, you have like just 5 minutes that we can talk quickly about the accounting stuff?
very quickly. Yep.
Okay.
Alrighty. So thank you all. I'm going to stop the recording now.